Unforeseen environmental incidents and natural disasters are an inevitable reality for communities everywhere. And with climate change, population growth, and ongoing infrastructure development, the importance of rapid response is only increasing. And by rapid response, we mean the ability to quickly assess damage, mobilize resources, and coordinate actions that meet regulatory, technical, and logistical requirements, ensuring recovery can begin without delay. At BG&E, our in-house engineering disciplines enable us to respond quickly to events such as floods, cyclones, landslides, and bushfires, working with eligibility and delivery constraints to get networks back into operation. Today, I'm joined by our National Emergency and Disaster Recovery Lead and senior engineers. Let's begin with your introductions.
I'm Ashleigh Lawrence. I work in the Gold Coast office in the Emergency Response Management team, and I'm a senior civil engineer. And I've been, I think, 4 years, coming up to 5 years with BG&E. Yeah.
My name's Max Gregori, and I'm the National Lead for Emergency and Reconstruction Management. I've been with BG&E for 5 years, over 5 years, and I'm an Associate Director with the company.
I'm Hasini. I'm a civil engineer with the ERM team. So I've been with BG&E close to a year now.
Oh, I really want to say that it's very special, this episode, to interview you two. I once upon a time used to work with you two delivering the projects that you do. So
You did. Yes, you did.
It's really exciting. Before we get started, I want our audience to understand the work that your team does. How would you guys describe BG&E's role in emergency disaster and recovery management?
So BG&E's role in disaster and recovery management comes in 2 phases. The first phase is that we are available to districts or to clients, local government authorities, state government authorities, to commence inspection, damage collation, do observations, and part of that inspection in order to ascertain the quantum of the damage. The first thing that the government really needs is to understand what's the value of the quantum of work, but also what is the priority? What is the needs of the community? Is there any designs or any part of the network that has to be quickly designed and reconstructed because communities have been disconnected? So there's that, what they call the initial emergent phase. It's the emergency response. That goes for about 3 months. At the back end of that, you have holding works, which goes for a period of time while they do the design, right up until construction, and then the contractor takes over. So BG&E get involved through that emergent and holding phase works, picking up the damage and responding to the priorities and the needs of the community as directed through the local government or state government. The other aspect is we do the design and construct, where we basically go into an agreement with the contractors and we commence undertaking design activities that meet the needs of construction that fit within a budget that has been set up by the local government authority or state government authority. So we are in a process, iterative process of ensuring that all our investigation and pickup at the early stage, which is scoping the work, scoping the damage, that becomes the business case, as it were. So we're developing a scope, we're developing what type of treatments we're going to use, how it's going to be constructed, what's it going to cost, all in the early stages, so that we can actually get into a design program. All of that hinges upon the eligibility guidelines. So the gates by which we undertake the works is set by the Queensland Reconstruction Authority. The reporting is through, firstly, the local authority, which is the state or the local government council, and beyond that, program management and delivery through TMR, before it gets to the Queensland Reconstruction Authority for assessment of the eligibility in terms of value for money, or if there's any aspects of it which deal with betterment or complementary works that should be funded by the actual asset owner. So we help the district and we help the asset owner go through that funding process based on our submissions.
Max has covered it in a very detailed sense, but I mean, natural disasters happen, we go out and we repair them back to in simple language, we repair them back, get the community operating again as quickly as possible, and get the funding to do so.
And what do you think clients need from a consultancy in this type of projects?
I think they need people that are willing to look outside the box and look where value can be added. Anyone can easily do a like-for-like repair, but there's always value to be added. There's always value for money where, maybe what was there before, maybe it wasn't safe, maybe there's a better way to do things. Where can you add this value and get a better cost and a better outcome for the community, whilst also keeping, a longevity treatment within the design lives, and just be kind of flexible with the type of designs that you're doing, and know that really you're trying to get it done quickly, efficiently, and get the community operating again.
Mm-hmm.
A good example, Lau, that blends in with what Ashleigh mentioned was the Palmerston project. So we came in at the back end of the emergent works. So the emergent works were already completed by TMR and the road was open to Palmerston Highway, which is a major freight route going east-west for the cattle industry and other industries that rely on it. So when we turned up on site, one of the key aspects of it was we looked at what can we keep that was already constructed so that we don't have to start from the very beginning. So we were able to integrate all the emergent work into our permanent work design. And that enabled no lost cost. So we're not starting from scratch. We're not digging anything out. We're building on what has already been developed. There were a lot of but a lot of good narratives that were put in for justification as to how to include that, augmented elements, which could include aspects of drainage or perhaps formation, that enabled the integration of the works that were done in one phase into the next phase. So it reduced cost, it reduced time, it enabled the sustainability of the entire program to be maintained, so nothing was lost. Everything was reused. That was a key aspect of ensuring that we're able to build on something, thinking outside the box, because traditionally it would be a matter of opening it up and starting from scratch again and really stamping it the way that we would have wanted. But there was nothing wrong with what was constructed in the first stage of the works, so that we could easily apply that moving forward into detailed design.
There was something that Ashleigh mentioned, which was, it would be easy to just deliver a like-for-like solution. Is that something that, you're, as a consulting firm, have to suggest, like a better solution regardless of the cost? Or would clients always want like-for-likes?
It's probably more like a like-for-like treatment, of an embankment for a road has slipped away. A like-for-like is putting it back with earth fill, for example.
Right.
Maybe you're closing the road to get compaction. That's not going to give you value for money, and that's not going to give you an outcome that's got longevity. So you look at, geotechnically or structurally, where can we build this back at the same, concept alignment type thing, but, we could build this back and it might be cheaper, more efficient, and here's the reasons why. We need to have this, crazy board pile wall or huge gabions or sawnails. It's going to be cheaper than closing the road. It's going to be better for the community. Yeah, there are constraints with it, and here's how we're going to address them by doing X, Y, Z. And in the process, maybe we need to upgrade culverts, or maybe we need to widen the road an extra meter or two than what before, but it's still going to be cheaper than this, closing the road, and it's still going to be better for everybody from like a longevity type thing as well. Like if it slipped, you put it back exactly how it was, it's probably going to happen again. But if you put something better, control the flow, they don't like the word upgrades or resilience in a way, but if it's integral to the design and it's still cheaper than what your like for like is, that's where you really get your value out of the doing all of that engineering sort of legwork at the start, getting your eligibility, and presenting those sort of value for money, multi-criteria analysis type things to.
You said that they don't like the word resilience. Is there a particular reason as to why that is the case?
So the funding arrangement is, as Ashleigh mentioned, it's a restoration, the like form and function of the road. But we're not changing the formal function of the road unless there is a specific benefit that provides a better value for money outcome. So value for money is pivotal to the whole justification process in order to do it. Resilience also is in another bucket of money. So they do run resilient programs. To run a resilient program, you need an activation. So there has to be a current DRFA program that's running, and the district needs to put on the table a proposal, or the council needs to put on the table a proposal that says this length of road or this particular aspect or element needs resilience, is being promoted resilience because we get repeated failures. So a case in point, so BG&E was involved in a couple of resilience programs while we were doing our disaster recovery. So that happened with DRFA-22 AF in South Coast region. So we had an activation, we had a live program that we were doing like-for-like restoration. The district promoted and sponsored for a resilience package on two of our key roads, which was Mount Lindsay Highway and Lamington National Park Road. The design that was proposed was a debris flow fence and improving the drainage that was at the toe of the batter to keep the debris off the road and out of the drain so that, the functionality of the drain and operation of the drain was maintained during the lighter rains, and that kept the road open, and it didn't create a blockage that it allowed water from the drain to cross the road and cause the scour on the other side, which is usually what happens on the range roads. So we were able to deliver 2 resilience packages on those roads concurrent with our DRFA 22. So that's why you have the DRFA program, which is the like for like, but you have a separate bucket for resilience. If the district wants to put forward funding to sponsor additional initiatives within their own program, such as a guardrail program or a drainage augmentation program, they can actually do that concurrent with the program works that we're undertaking as part of the DRFA program.
I guess this is a great segue to asking the next question. I just wanted to make sure that everyone that's listening to this podcast understood the differences. And I think, again, if you were to compare your work with a traditional, infrastructure project, like the delivery of those projects, what would you say, what makes, emergency and recovery management different from a standard infrastructure project?
It's very reactive. That's perhaps the biggest differentiator, is that the eligibility scheme over the top, how you have to respond or develop your designs. It's not just using OS roads. It's not just using TMR standards. That's typical of any infrastructure project. You base it on a set of specifications. We incorporate them as well. We still have to do sightline checks, aquaplaning checks. We do that as part of our works, but we're not changing or upgrading the road. We are restoring the hinge point, and perhaps it might have a structure or an improved drainage. But on top of that sits the eligibility guidelines that drives through case study presentation what can and cannot be done. And you have to adopt your initial pickup that you have. You have to look at the community and the road users, which is what you do in a typical planning process. You look at road users and what happens on the road and the asset. But you have to apply that in terms of, now I've got all the base information, I've got to rebuild it with a structure or with some sort of treatment that meets the eligibility guidelines. Now, once we start a project, depending on the magnitude and severity of the damage, and let's not just say it could be bushfires down south, it could be tropical cyclones up north, it could be flooding, it could be an earthquake, whatever type of damage that or event that's occurred, the same rules apply in building back or in designing for the building back. It has to be a staged approach that's very logical and traceable, because all decision processes to lead you to a particular design treatment has to pass through multiple gates through the damage assessment matrix. So once you've gone through that process, you've ticked the box and deemed, as Ashleigh was saying, an MCA, a costing, a concept, a step change. All of those aspects have to be considered, plus on top the road guidelines, the planning elements, but overarching an umbrella over the top is the eligibility guidelines. While you are doing that on a DRFA program, you'll be intersected with another event, and you'll have to go back to the very beginning and start the process again, doing a subsuming. Sites that you have already inspected, perhaps have started the design, you have to now take it out because the damage has gotten worse and the treatment doesn't work anymore, and take it into the next event. That's basically subsuming. The delivery mechanism, you could be on a linear development of a design, but then halfway through the design, there could be a call to actually divert and create a package of work that you have to go out to market straight away because of a particular need. Or you might have to divert because there is a critical need, be it raised from a community, political, district level need that says, no, we need this design delivered a lot faster, so we're going to excise this package and deliver this package earlier. So there could be markets, there could be community, there could be political needs, there could be any facet that could influence the delivery of the program so that it is never linear. We have never done a DRFA program that is strictly linear. It's always splintered off into multiple different delivery mechanisms, delivery modes to meet the demands or meet the needs of the community, the district, infrastructure, programs, whatever it may be, that there's always this external influence that drives the delivery.
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting way of doing a project. You kind of get a little bit of, your business case, a little bit of your options analysis, phases of projects. You get, your concept design, your prelim, your detailed design, your construction phase support. You kind of get exposed to something that on a normal project, you're doing business case and options analysis, or you're doing prelim detailed, or you're doing construction support. I think you kind of get a little bit of everything kind of condensed into much shorter time frames. Like Max said, it's very reactive, and that's just your normal sort of reconstruction project. We've also got, the first response emergency works, the high risk stuff that, these slopes are unstable, or the road might fail if we don't address it. So you've got almost two types of projects within the DRFA, which is condensed or very condensed, or your holding works. What can we do at a minimum to keep this road open, operational,
Safe.
while we do some real design to get the legs on sort of this site. And so you kind of get, pretty much a little bit of everything in any of the DRFA side of things.
The other thing which is key, and Lau, you would have seen this as well in the office, is we tend to go out on site a lot more. So we're not bound to our desks in doing our design. The design is literally contingent on the quality of the inspection throughout the job, and you have a year to pick up your damage. So this is the other aspect, is from the event that there's a year to pick up the damage. So you think you may have finished, but you might find that there's additional scope that is picked up by, one of the inspectors that might be driving past and sees something. It could be through, say, a slashing operation that they find another scarp on the edge of the road that's now created a nuisance or a hazard to the motorists. There could be cracking Because remember, everything's temporal. There could be the initial failure that you pick up, but then all of a sudden the road may start to peel in the outer wheel path because of the pumping action of the vehicles and the wheel loads, that you'll start to see this pulling away of the pavement and all this additional cracking occur. And you might have to quickly go out and inspect. So there's a rapid response now. All of a sudden, we have identified it, and it was a type of failure. The road's still open and volume of traffic still remains the same, but now it's literally progressing and becoming worse, and now you have to make an intervention. So our engineers spend a great deal of time out on site. We've done over 50,000 hours of inspections in 4 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Through 9 events or more than 9 events. So 50,000 hours of inspections without incident, which is a real compliment to the team, that it requires a lot of maturity when you're undertaking these inspections and then putting all the information together, collating it so that it can actually make sense in the downstream phases of design and delivery. Yeah. And we bookend it, that the guys are out on site, the team's out on site at the event, days after the event, and they're on site during construction phase. They're on site during the design, just going back and rechecking or perhaps re-looking at sites just to get their head around what are the constructability issues. Is there anything that can be improved? Or like Ashleigh said, what can we integrate that would make the design life of the structure achieve the objectives of TMR or the specification or council?
Just to add to that question, I think another thing I find a bit different to your typical infrastructure project is that we do a lot of like-for-like replace designs. So we have to always think about the existing case, the existing site conditions, and the best solution is not what the client always wants. They want to match to existing as much as possible in most of our work. So that's something we always think about. And also the site constraints, like Max said, when we go out on site, even for, to get survey, you got to really think about how are we going to get a team of surveyors down there, and is it possible to get it done? So I think site constraints play a lot into our design and the timely response for our deliverables as well.
And that's a really good point. Like, I did want to talk about that, and to complement on everyone's points, I think, to Ash, it was one of those sectors that, for me as a civil designer at the time, it provided me with being involved with a lot of stages in a project. And I think it was a little bit rewarding to be able to see everything that you're doing 2D/3D getting constructed. And that was, I guess, in a shorter time frame that you would traditionally see in any other projects. And I think as a young professional, that really made me feel like connected with the project and understanding the impacts that each project had on community. Now, going to what Hasini said, that I agree, is the site constraints, and I want to ask you about that. What are the challenges of designing in such tight spaces at the time, or with such site constraints for you?
I think site challenges it's something we encounter at every stage of a project. So even from the initial damage pickup, where we can't just get out of the ute of our vehicle and pick up pavement damage the way we want. You can clearly see pavement damage, but it's 100 kilometer per hour road with tight horizontal bends. So you got to think about your safety. How am I going to pick up this and show our clients that this is going to be eligible damage? So yeah, it's a tricky one. So that's just site, going on site. But then when you go past that site investigation phase into getting, to your design phase, sometimes you might not have all the information you need to inform your design because of the geometry of the site. For example, a culvert could be very steep and the outlet could be on a very steep downslope. So you don't have all the information about that existing, how the culvert works and the existing configuration. So it's a lot of assumptions you need to make, a lot of engineering judgment goes into your design as well, and that comes from experience on being in this space as well. And that's where Max and Ashleigh and all the seniors come in to help me a lot of the times. So yeah. And then I haven't even talked about the site constraints when you actually go into construction, which I'm sure Max and Ashleigh can speak about. Passing the ball to.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a difficult space, especially in the design side of things, where, I mean, you're in these rural communities where sometimes the road's not built, with your standard sort of property boundary offsets. You get this survey information with your cadastrals or, those early concept stages, and like this property is within our road, and how we're going to build something where it's the road exists in someone's property already, or it's very close to, how we're going to put a structure in here. We need to, an oil project, you'd go, we're going to resume this land, we'll put in a structure. But there's all these sort of weird long-standing agreements with property owners, and it's like, well, you can have that bit, my fence is down there, so that's where my boundary is. And it's all a bit interesting, different challenges where normally cadastral boundary that's the boundary. But there's all these strange agreements out in the regional communities where the fence line's a couple meters over. That's the long-standing known boundary of the property. So we use, sort of the client's knowledge and the property owner's knowledge to try and fit in our design, and also like site accesses and stuff. They're like, okay, you can't access from this side because I use that for my cattle, or I use that for sort of an informal access to access this part of my property, but you can come from this side. So it's all a bit of like molding and putting things into reports or contract documents or on the drawings, trying to communicate those issues and constraints over to, so I guess, the wider project team who's going to build it, the client who's going to manage it, all that kind of stuff.
Don't let it fool you, Lau, but Ashleigh and I have been on extremely steep slopes on Mount Lindsay Highway in the middle of a blistering gale, looking for culverts and looking for tension cracks down a slope. So we can become very nimble, but we don't put ourselves in slips, trips, and falls are very, very key to making sure the team survives. And also rockfalls. So rockfalls can happen without notice. Always when we hear, rockfall, if someone calls out rockfall, we never look up because you end up wearing it in your face. So you're always running, away in a longitudinal direction along the road. But one of the key aspects that really makes this a unique team in its delivery are two things when it comes to constraints. Is that we're not constrained, and I'll go the other way, we're not constrained by our location. So both Ashleigh and Hasini, in their own respects, if there's a disaster up in far north Queensland, such as we're currently working on 25J, the team localise. We fly up there, we set up the team, they're there to do the damage pickup, they're there to meet the client, engage with the client, sort out what are the resources necessary, such as site investigation or survey, and what pavement pickups have to happen. And sometimes the innovation comes out of it through the process. So we've come up with an innovative way. Like Hasini said, if there's a constraint in terms of safety and we can't get out of the car to pick up pavement damage, we've come up with an innovative way that's been accepted by the QRA and PMD as an accurate measure of the damage without putting people at risk. And that's been accepted, and they deem it as being a real positive because we can quantify it, we can demonstrate it. So it gets us into the next stage of our delivery. So we're not constrained in the sense of our location. So the team mobilizes. We have to be a mobile team. We've moved our team as far south as the Jenolan Caves in New South Wales. We've moved our team as far southwest as Tenterfield, as far north as Cassowary and Tablelands district outside in order to pick up damage. And they could be there for, a week, 2 weeks. They could revisit it during construction. So in those aspects, there are constraints that we have to overcome. And in overcoming that constraint, we also find that it's not everyone's cup of tea to do ERM, but the team is a very resilient team. By being well-versed, well-practiced, having systems and processes in place, such as damage assessment matrices or perhaps checklists that we employ through our detailed design, or innovative thoughts about how we pick up our damage, enables the team to be a little bit more resilient, to overcome the constraint of this longevity or the implications of delivering disaster activation through a very constrained period of time. So that's the other thing which makes it different, is that unlike some transport projects that have an extended time frame in the spend, in the financial spend, DRFA is very limited in its durations with a cutoff date, a moratorium or a mandatory cutoff date. And we have to design, inspect, develop the design and have room for procurement and construction delivery within a 2-year window. So within that 2-year window, everything has to happen. And we need to ensure that the contractor, when we're planning this work, that the contractor has sufficient time within another wet season usually. So we have to take into account another wet season or another bushfire season of implications and risks in order to deliver that program.
It's a reactive sector. You have to think on your feet, basically. I did like what you were talking about, the characteristics of your team. And I think I would say a differentiator from, I guess, the type of work that you and BG&E does in this space is the fact that we have an in-house team. And I do think I would like to, have a little bit of a story how this team came about in BG&E and, how many of you are there now at the moment, because I remember it was just you two at the start.
Yeah. Oh, it was just Max at the start, wasn't it?
It started when I joined BG&E back in 2020, and we picked up our first DRFA program. We were consistently delivering DRFA programs in southeast Queensland and getting very good at it. We realised that there was an opportunity potentially to set up a team that was like-minded, those that had DRFA experience, those that have worked for the QRA or worked in delivering like Hasini. QRA is the Queensland Reconstruction Authority. These sorts of like-minded people that don't mind this type of work, don't mind getting out on site. Some come, like Hasini, come from a construction background, or myself, a project management and construction background, contract administration. It tends to be a different blend of engineers. So in 2024, BG&E set up the ERM team, a specific dedicated team. Ashleigh, myself, there was Rohit, so there were 3 of us that were actually delivering, bringing in more people from other disciplines to assist us, to where we are now, which is a team of 11 in about a year. And we're growing, we're seeing a need to grow. And the way that it works is that we have a core team of our 11 and growing that basically spearhead the DRFA program. So if you've got a DRFA program, you've got DRFA project managers that can get on the front foot, talk the same language, understand the implications of the community, understand how quickly we can get the funding process happening, because that's really the key. The funding process is key to the success of the delivery. If you hold up the funding, or if you're delayed in the funding, everything else has a knock-on effect. So the 11 of us now are spearheading multiple projects. We have opportunities that are overseas. We have opportunities interstate that we're working in with other departments and other state offices, with elements of our team that is augmented by the local knowledge. And the collaboration that we get is exceptionally good. So we're excited. We're excited to see where the team goes in terms of its mass, in terms of delivering these events.
Yeah, it must be exciting just to see the growth from what it was and to what it is now, and all the
It's
projects that you...
pretty cool seeing it come from me and Max in this tiny little Gold Coast office
I remember.
to moving offices, only a few years, and it's really good to see it growing, and it's a really good team to be a part of as well for anyone listening that might be interested in, working in this space. Disaster recovery, emergency response management, this is always going to be here, and it's going to just get worse, with the controversial global warming. More rain, more fires, more flooding. There's always going to be a job for someone who knows how to do emergency response management.
One of the jobs, just on what Ashleigh said, we delivered a job down a casino way in northern New South Wales, Northern Rivers, that suffered huge flooding. The road was cut off so that this access into other major centres was literally cut off for this little community. And the old farmers, we were talking about, mums and dads, grandfathers and grandmothers were cut off from, doctors, appointments, the post office, just their basic needs, just being able to engage with looking after their physical needs. For about 2 years, they had to do a 45-minute detour each way. So that taxed that little community. So when we reconstructed the road, delivered the design and the construction in an expedited period of time, faster than most would think, on that opening day, to have these people from the community come up to you and say, well, what did you do on the project? And you say, well, look, I was the project manager for the design team. And they come and give you a hug, and saying, thank you. You have no idea how much time this saves us for the 2 years. I mean, your heart just melts. You cannot help but feel the tangible connection to what you're doing, to the immediate benefits that you're transferring back to the community on opening day. And that's why we do it. We do it to help the community. We do it to help the district project manager, because that guy, the project manager, more times than not, is also a victim of the disaster event. He lives in that area. We empathize with the actual people that are in there because we've been in their shoes. We've either worked for the Queensland Reconstruction Authority or for, an asset owner such as TMR or the council. So we've been in his shoes. We live, Ashleigh and I in particular, or some of our team live in the areas that are affected by disasters. So we have this empathy. Disaster recovery, emergency recovery response, there's always an emotional attachment to it. There's always an emotional thread. You have to have empathy.
And I think it's important to bring that to everyone's attention, as you said, Ash, if anyone is considering, joining the team, there's a lot of reward on working in these type of projects. And I think it's also very challenging in its own ways. So you'll never be bored.
For
sure.
If you like to be busy, come join us.
That's right.
Get your Wellington boots on.
I wanted to finish this with some personal questions. I mean, Max, you basically told me essentially why you joined and what you do. I'm going to ask the ladies.
Go for it.
So ladies, what do you enjoy the most about working in the emergency response management team?
Would you like to go first, Hasini?
You can go first, Ash. While I think of my response.
I mean, I like working in this team. I started doing this when I was a grad or / undergrad at uni. Did my thesis in construction contract administration and the kind of systems that go with that. And so I got to work with Max on Cyclone Debbie in 2017 up at Lamington National Park, which has always kind of held a special place in my heart, that road. My uncle lives down the bottom of it. We've go for lots of hikes up the top there. And it was honestly a very interesting, constrained, very cool project to be a part of. From there, I was in the roads and highways team. We did the M1 on the Gold Coast. Then I joined the government and saw that Max had left the government, which I joined. Probably, maybe he left because of me. And I saw that he went to BG&E, so I reached out because I really liked the way that Max worked. I really liked doing that sort of mixed design site, being busy. I like to be busy and sort of not have those lull periods where you're just waiting for the next job to start up. And so I said, are you looking for engineers? That kind of thing. So yes, they were, came and interviewed and joined the team from there. And so now I'm kind of back in the space I started in as an undergrad and grad. And honestly, I really quite enjoy it. It's about the community. It's about being reactive, doing different kind of engineering than sort of your typical roads and highways jobs, which I like those too, but I really find you get to be more in the detail. You get to do more of the things that on a big project, the design manager's just doing or the associate engineer's just doing. You don't get to be in that. You're kind of just the workhorse. Although you're doing very interesting stuff on those projects, and you're, kicking some goals in some sense. In these disaster recovery teams, you really get to get into the nitty-gritty detail of how does this connect with my civil and my drainage and geotech? How are we going to interface all of these kind of different things? And you get to get a lot more wide-ranging experience. And it's always kind of something new. It's not just like, okay, now we do pavement, now we do this, it's doing the same sort of thing, ring in, ring out, because the standards are the standards. We get to be a lot more innovative, a lot more, like Max said, reactive. And there's always something different. There's always something new to do. I'm still learning every day on these disaster recovery projects, which is not something I feel like, in some spaces I was like, oh, there's not much more to learn. I've read this standard 100 times. There's always something new on this disaster stuff. And that's really why I like doing it.
Agreed. You think you know something, but there's always something new you're going to learn. So I actually had, to be completely honest, I had a bias as well because I had a transport background. I was in Arcadis in the transport team for 4 years. And then I wanted to do some site work. I was working for a contractor and they put me on a DRFA project where I got to, every day go on site and pick up damage. Going in, I thought I wasn't going to enjoy it, but I actually really ended up liking some of the work I did. And it was really nice connecting with the community as well. Like you'd go out doing some pickup and then, landowners would come talk to you. They'd bring their dogs, get to pet them. There's some definitely some extra perks that I didn't expect. But on top of that, it's also the constructability. So not only is it connecting with the community, but also for me as an engineer, I think it makes me more adaptable because it's a very reactive space, like Max said. So when I started at BG&E, I've already experienced DRFA work on the contractor side, so I knew I was going to enjoy it. But like Ash mentioned, I really enjoy the design management part of it. You don't just get pigeonholed into one thing. You can experience different elements that you wouldn't otherwise, or you can only experience after a few years of 10 years of being an engineer. I can experience it now. Yeah, I think it makes you it makes me, I like to think I'm adaptable, and that's also another professional goal for me. So yeah, I think it's what's the saying, to one stone, two beds. That's the one. Yeah.
Oh yeah, you killed two birds with one stone.
Yes.
Yeah.
Nice. I'll add my 2 cents from when I was in the team. And I think, as I said, my favorite thing was the fact that I could have a positive impact in the community and see the project from start to end. But I would be lying if I didn't tell you that the sector and Max, being under Max's wing, provided me with a lot of experience as a civil designer. And your traditional transport projects, I was in industry for a couple of, I think 5 years before I joined your team. And there was always that sort of thing that you get pigeonholed. I was a drafter. I started as a drafter and they only saw me as a drafter. And when I was doing my transition into civil design, there was that sort of caveat that they were keen to, get me doing some design work, but they never had a project because I never had the experience. and something like that. And I was like, well, how am I going to get the experience if you don't give me a go? And I think that's the best thing. I remember that, like I told Max, I think the type of work that you guys did and that you do taught me so much as a civil designer, as a drafter. And that's something that I, will always remember. And I think it was one of my favorite sectors to work in. So not just because we're recording this, Max, but yeah.
No.
It was nice.
That's pleasing to hear. I think I get out of bed and I think how fortunate I am to work with young professionals that, are going to be the emerging new leaders in this industry. So I do the best that I can to ensure that they have every opportunity, as much of it as possible, to become fully rounded and better leaders themselves. Don't get me wrong, but everyone keeps me on a tight leash, including these two. So they really help me, support me, and we can only do this as a team effort. So I'm blessed in that regard. So I'm very grateful.
Yeah, you have a really good team too.
Yeah,
and there's a lot of women in there, which is so interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Go girls.
What are we? I think we're like almost half.
Yeah.
Almost
girls
right
just
down
want
the
to have
middle.
fun.
No, it's really good. Well, it's been a pleasure interviewing you all. Again, as I said, it's a very special episode just because of the fact that that was my last type of work that I did when I was in engineering. So thank you for this. Thank you for your time and for showing us through what working in emergency response management is like, a little bit of a snippet. And thank you guys for joining us today.
Thank you, Lau.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
That brings us to the end of today's episode. Thanks for joining us, and we look forward to having you back for our next conversation.